So we've heard from the star and the star director of Cosmopolis, but this is what you need to know.
It's very problematic. I mean, we have to say that from the beginning. Adaptation of a novel by Don DeLillo about this obscenely rich high flyer travelling across town in this limousine, ostensibly to get a haircut, which is possibly to do with him wanting to get back to his past, wanting to get back to his roots. En route, he has meetings with these people who come into the limousine with him, and they all talk in this same strange, stultified, Pinteresque is one word, manner, in these very, very sort of almost arcane sentence structures that's a deliberately awkward, complex meter. And silences in between that are absolute dead silence. In one way, the best way of understanding Cosmopolis is as a science fiction film in which the limousine is basically a spaceship. I was thinking of those scenes in 2001 when it's either Poole or Bowman writhing in space, but in utter silence. Also, there are moments when it appears that the cast are doing impressions of David Bowie in The Man Who Fell to Earth, which, of course, Alan Yentob cast that after having seen Bowie in Cracked Actor, with him driving around the place in a limousine. And there is something of that going on. The idea of the real world in the background being actually unreal is also heightened by the fact that a lot of the rear projection, the outside world, looks deliberately artificial. I mean, and it is certainly deliberate.
It does to start with.
Yes, and then it changes.
Yes.
The quality of it changes, but at the beginning it appears to be almost... I'm certain deliberately artificial. Then what happens is that this bubble that he moves in is destroyed from the outside, and as it is destroyed, it sort of reflects what's happening to his inner state, both his financial state and his personal state. And the film is peopled by people doing impressions of human beings. I mean, at one point he has this conversation with his wife. We're astonished to find out that he's married, in which she says, "This is good, we're having a conversation," as if normal people. So in fact, the whole sense that what we're observing is, I mean, Robert Pattinson there said unreal. Some people have read that character as vampiric. You could read it as alien-like. I mean, inhuman in the best and most deliberate possible sense. I also think the film deals with those ideas in a very Cronenbergian, very, very cerebral way. The problem that I had with it is this. That sense of glaciation, of looking at everything through a car window, was something that was approached in a film like Crash, in which the very sort of controversial eroticism of a movie like Crash was always tempered by the fact that it was as if you were looking at it through a hermetically sealed window. But it was visceral. Visceral enough to have people on their feet saying, we have to ban this movie because it's dealing with such outrageous ideas. In the case of this, the glaciation is so complete, so removed, so hermetic, that it's very, very difficult to invest in it emotionally. Now, you could argue, and in fact, I've read a very good argument saying this is entirely the point. The point is that your emotions aren't meant to be engaged. The problem that I have is that, for me, Cronenberg's best work has always worked on a visceral, physical gut level. He comes out of, Scrungy Horror, Shivers, Rabid, The Brood, Videodrome, The Fly. These are films in which metaphors are made visual. And there's a tradition in which films which have a physical response that cause laughter, that cause tears, that cause arousal are sort of looked down on, and somehow cerebral responses are seen as somehow higher. It's almost as if Cronenberg has worked up from the body into the brain, because for me, Cosmopolis is a film that works almost entirely on a cerebral level. I think Pattinson is really good, and I've always thought he was a good actor. I think Cronenberg is a really intelligent director, and there's no point in which I look at this and I think what's lacking is intelligence or insight. But what is absolutely lacking is the ability for me to engage with those characters and those drama. I mean, Cronenberg said at one point, you have to not be bored in the presence of the character. I felt that the movie, and I've now seen it twice, and with the most open mind, I found it impossible to engage with it on an emotional level, and that crucially prevented me from enjoying it in a cinematic way. What I'm saying is, for me, as a film, it doesn't work. Despite all the things that are right with it, it doesn't work. But that's not to say that in not working, it doesn't raise some really interesting questions about why it's not working. And also not to say that it is not the work of a filmmaker who's attempting to do something oddly experimental at a fairly sort of late stage in his career. So it doesn't work. I've tried it twice, but the reason it doesn't work may be hardwired into its DNA, which says it's a film that it doesn't want you to engage on any emotional level.